Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Sunday Night Hang right here on YouTube on surprisingly Sunday nights, or in this case, Monday mornings. I'm Ben. Please like and subscribe if you're new. And tonight I have my special Aussie buddy, Haas himself, in the house making a return engagement. We're just talking away off air, and I'm like, oh, we should probably go live. And welcome back, my friend.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we should probably talk on air. That would make more sense because we've exhausted half our conversation already. No. Yeah,
that's the way it goes. We've already got 28 people already in here, so I'm going to get right to roll call. So if you want to hear your name, you got to at least say hello. We've got the one and only Zach Thong, Martin Lemaire, Dan of New Jersey, Symmetry, Joe Hervey 84, Dan of New Jersey again. He's popular. Vince RJ, Tinkerbell, John Duchesne, Thomas Santiago. Welcome back, Thomas. I missed you Monday night. I didn't get to sing his name for the first time in years. It threw me off. It just threw me off. Scott Brockway is here. House of Twang. Let's see. Hip Metal Works, Max Josephson, Warlag. Great to see Warlag in here. BC Rich 581. Awesome. Charles 75N, awesomer. Gretch Zeppelin, awesomest. Sure. Let's see. Magic Man, awesome. Get into the pre-gamers here. Some guy named Simon Hosford, never heard of him. Nope. GP Page 2, awesome. I'm saying awesome an awful lot. Terry's 3Gs, great to see Terry in here. Billy Baloney. All right, now we get back to the live comments. Because like Doug Santinello, yes, I think, nope, Santiello, that's it. All Dave, all night, that one, that's much easier. Mike C, hello, welcome, I think that's a new name. Jeff K, he's returning, you can tell, he's a member. Awesome, Guitar Man 45, Milt T, oh, T Ricky, dang, first super chat of 2022, yes, indeedly doodly, you quote Ned Flanders. Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So yeah, we were talking off air about New Year's and what musicians prefer to do at New Year's depending on their age in life and kind of the been there, done that category. Had it spilled on my t-shirt.
Well, like we were just talking about in the green room. I think my days of doing New Year's Eve's gigs are just about done. I think I did one this New Year's, but that was sort of to help out a buddy, and it was a little bit out of town. It was nearly a 4-hour drive from Melbourne, and it ended up being a little bit of a debacle because the singer whose gig it was, his car broke down, and it was 40 degrees. So, and that's obviously Celsius, everybody. So it was damn hot.
That's hot.
It's pretty hot. I don't know what that is in. You guys are Fahrenheit or Celsius, Ben?
We're Celsius. That's all the degrees during the summer. Like I think for the first time ever, we flirted with 40, especially with the Humidex, because we have that moist heat. Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's when like Lytton out in BC this year caught on fire and we lost the town. It was 40. Yeah, really? They called it a heat dome.
What, the whole town?
Yeah, the whole town got wiped out in a half an hour.
Oh, man.
Yeah, sad.
Not cool.
And I saw that happen in Colorado. There was a flash forest fire just the other day. It took out a town. It's crazy.
Yeah, BC Rich there in the chat was saying maybe it's 89 degrees Fahrenheit. It's actually 105.
Yeah.
So it's warm. And anyway, so his car broke down only about 45 minutes into the journey from Melbourne to this gig, right on the border between Victoria and New South Wales, actually. And so he had, there was going to be no cabs that could get him there. And so he ended up getting a lift with a Fijian family, and they were singing songs in the back and plying him with beer. So by the time he got to the gig about 30 minutes before we were due to start playing, and he was absolutely wasted because he'd been drinking with this Fijian family the whole way up there. So anyway, the gig sort of almost went fine. I don't know if it really fine enough anyway.
It went.
all the other people there, having their New Year's Eve and having a few drinks as well. So I don't think they cared that much. But, man, back in the day, I was telling Ben just before, we used to just try and squeeze in as many gigs as possible on New Year's Eve because of all the extra coin. And then we thought, why not? If we're going to be doing one gig and not hanging out with our mates, we may as well do 2, 3. There was a couple of years in a row where I managed to squeeze 3 New Year's Eve gigs in all on the same night, just of course, because they're at different times and close enough locations. But the extra money just isn't worth it. You end up just you're sweating the whole time. You're running yourself ragged. Everything's a stress. If you get stuck in traffic, then people at the next gig are waiting for you and they're shitty by the time you get there. And then you finish your last gig at 2:30 a.m. or whatever it is, load up the car, and all your other friends have either already gone to bed or they're so trashed that when you get there's nothing you can say to them.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of catching up to do.
May as well just go home at that point.
That's right. I mean, if you're turning up to a New Year's Eve party at 4 a.m. and you're still sober, you got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah.
So
you won't.
Yeah. So anyway, other than this year, my last 4 years or so actually were just spent at home, just with friends, like small groups of friends, like 4 or 5 people. And if the weather was warm, we'd have a barbecue on, and man, that's my favorite way to do it these days, I think. Unless it was a gig with my own show or my own band and it paid obscenely, that'd be different. Yeah. But as a session guitarist, nah. I just rather don't worry about the money. I'd rather just stay at home and have a barbecue. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing because it's beautiful weather this time of year where you are. So you have that option. Whereas us, we're hunkered down, we're bundled up. But the last few years I've just stayed at home. Prior to that, played a couple of New Year's. Prior to that, when we were playing the original music, we didn't usually book New Year's, so we would get together, everybody, all the wags, as they say, the wives and girlfriends of the band members. Yeah. And it was a 5-piece band, so right there's 10 of us, plus a couple other family members and such would come along. And then we'd also have other local bands buddy bands, I say, bands you share the bill with fairly often. Your buddy bands, hey, we're playing with you. Can I borrow your amp? And they're like, yeah. Can our drummer borrow your drummer's drums? We're like, yeah. So it's like one back line for 2 bands because we're both 5 pieces. Great. Yeah. And we got along well. And so they come over and party it up, or at least a couple of their band members. And it was funny too, because it might be for the half dozen bands that we kind of hung out with. There's always 1 or 2 single guys in each one. So they'd all come over because the rest of their band members are older and they're with family, whatever, staying at home for New Year's. So yeah, it was a grand old bash for that. And I never drove. My dad would drive me because where my bass player lived was only 10 minutes from the house. So he's like, oh yeah, I'll drive over. He gets it. Yeah. And it was out in the country, so we could have fireworks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's good. That sounds great. That's a good way to do it too. Just get a bunch of bands.
Yeah. Way less drama.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to deal with the sloppy drunks. Because generally, band members and, let's say, spouses of band members, usually all pretty chill. There's not usually a high-strung one. And if there is the high-strung spouse, that guy's not invited.
That's right.
Because we want a chill environment,
And there is always a couple of muso friends with the high-strung spouse. There's always 1 or 2.
And sometimes that's the entertainment for the evening. Because, I always say there's always a fight between 2 males, a fight between a male and female. So, one girl's puking, another one's bawling her eyes out. So as long as you're on the chill side, you just sit back, you find the comfy spot on the couch, and you just, oh, wow, I don't have to deal with this.
Yeah, just find a spot on the couch and enjoy the show and the frivolity of everything else going around you,
Yeah. So we got a bunch more people jumping in here. Hello to everybody joining in. I just saw there's like 10 as we're just chatting away here. So it's great to see everybody. So if either of you have a question for either of us, ask away, definitely, and comment on anything. Gear Junkie 35 says Simon's camera is looking nice and crispy.
Oh, is it? Thanks, Gear Junkie. It's actually just the camera in the MacBook Pro. So no no special stuff. But they're getting better and better, aren't they? Like even the iPhone cameras and stuff, the quality of things that even just the layman can do now on a phone is, I mean, I've got a photographer friend, and I can't remember how many years he said, but he was saying something like an iPhone camera now is better quality than an SLR camera he would have paid a lot of money for as a photographer like 10 years ago, even.
Right.
So I don't know if that's, any photographers in the channel know if that's correct or not, but
pretty close. I wouldn't doubt it with the latest gen iPhone. Yeah,
that seems about right to me. And I think it was about 10 years or something he said, you know, for so now the stuff that we just take for granted, like, you know, I'm using the camera in the MacBook.
Well, is probably, you know, it's funny you mentioned that because I had a rather derogatory comment left on one of my videos.
What's that?
Recently, and the guy said the comment was, this guy should never do a demo and definitely should never be in front of a camera the camera again. You know, he should be replaced. And I'm thinking, okay, first of all, it's me doing a bootleg demo in a guitar store, shooting it on an iPhone. Do you think this is a production crew? Like, film set? Like, what like, have I fooled him that bad? Yes. The one tripping problem with Ben Coombs' production was he had that one guy in front of the camera. Sure. I said, okay.
I think for anyone that doesn't do any kind of online content, I think some people probably do assume that you've got some sort of 2 or 3 person crew, you know, and the truth is that most people don't. Most people are just doing it themselves. So, you know, and don't you agree? It's all about the quality of the content. These days, like we're talking about, the picture quality and the sound quality, even from an iPhone or a laptop, is good enough that then the focus then becomes the content, which is as it should be, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. I just chuckled and I went, okay, well, thank you, I guess, for the production value. So I look at it as a cup half full, and yeah, exactly. You just read, delete, and move on. So
yeah.
John says, I have a team writing this comment.
Hey, BC was asking me, Simon, how's the newest wave of COVID affecting live venues in Australia? Well, it's been pretty bad up until about a month or so ago, and the venues are now allowed almost capacity indoors. Outdoors is better, and obviously because we're in our summertime here, all the outdoor festivals and things are starting to happen, you know, the wineries and all of that stuff. Those things, unless there's like some really crazy spike in numbers and there's more lockdowns, I think the numbers for the outdoor festivals that are about to start in Australia are probably going to be not affected that much. The indoors might, like, for example, the cases now in Melbourne and Sydney are skyrocketing so much every day that we're now back to wearing masks indoors. So like cafes and stuff like that. And I've got my Van Halen birthday show coming up on the 25th of Jan. At this point, the venue, the Corner Hotel, have told me that that they're going to be at full capacity and no masks. So, but look, at the moment, it's pretty fluid because the cases both in Melbourne and Sydney are rising. So, you know, we're all crossing our fingers that the governments just leave us alone for a little while now and accept the fact that now that most people are vaccinated, people are just going to get it, like the flu. They're going to get it, and they're going to get over it. Most people, of course, and that's it. So yeah, so BC, I hope that answers your question. But yeah, at the moment, gigs are all going ahead as planned, unless anything sort of nuts happens again. Which, of course, now that we're in a brand new year with the auspicious year number 2022, which my numerologist friends tell me that is a very auspicious year and good for the planets and all of that stuff. If that's the case, then hopefully the music scene just thrives and goes ahead, and everyone just, like I was saying, okay, so you're going to get the flu like normal.
Exactly.
Now. So,
Joe Hervey asks, does Haas like the 6505? If so, does he boost it, etc.?
I do like the 6505, and I'm assuming that you mean boosted in the front end, right? Yes, I sometimes do, but not always. So, I mean, like anything, it just kind of depends what I'm doing with it.
Sure.
And And Ben, on the last time I was in the chat on one of your shows, of course, we were talking about the LPD pedal that Lawrence made, which is your pedal, the nice drive A.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great front end boost for me, and that's what I'm using in front of my Plexi. So, yeah. So I think the answer is sometimes yes. Yeah,
Exactly, as needed.
It's like with anything, isn't it? I mean, I've got like my main touring pedal board,
as needed,
which is hang on, sorry, I got some volume coming from somewhere else. Yeah, my main touring pedal board tends to have the same stuff stuck on it, and then I've got this kind of little makeshift board that I can sort of pull things on and off, and that's the one that if I'm like playing with a new setup or a new amp or a new guitar, that's the board that I'll use because I can kind of fool around with it, and and you know, it's whatever drive pedals I'm using, you know, gain structure type stuff, that'll be completely relative to whatever the amp is I'm going to use. So if I'm using my little Fender 40 watt combo, which is one of the the Blues Deluxe, yep, that'll have its own set of pedals that I know will work fantastic with that.
And if where's my Blues Deluxe? That's right, it's still over there. I got to put it back.
Yeah. Mine's actually getting it's at the doctor's at the moment, getting some love on the operating table. Something happened to it, I don't know, but I've had that thing for a long time. That's been my like Melbourne nightclub workhorse, you know.
Sure. The moment I bought mine, it became my number one and only as far as live, unless I'm going stereo.
Yeah, and the thing, look, I would say that if you want to spend a lot more money, there are 40 watt valve combos that, to my personal taste, I think sound closer to what I'm trying to achieve. But what you can do very, very easily with those Fender Blues Deluxes is put a couple of different gain stage pedals in front of them, or a nice like a preampy like a valve preampy thing, and you can pretty much make it sound like any combo that you would buy.
Exactly, it's a chameleon. It was almost like what they call that full range cabinet before a full range cabinet was a thing, because you can play anything through them. Just hit the right preamp in a box, like an LPD 87 or a Friedman pedal or anything like that.
Yeah.
Mill, thank you very much, buddy, with the super chat. Yes, any new gear? Not this year so far. We're only 2 days in, but I did get at the end of the year, I've shown it off, I think once before, because I wanted a new tuner for my pedal board. So I went small and affordable. So I found this on the old Amazon there from Swift Audio, and this thing is so small.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah. So that's not going to take up much room, needless to say. And that was the idea, because that you can shove in the corner of any pedal board. You know, there's always room for this on the board.
Yeah.
What's up, RJ?
That is very cool.
So, yes. Maybe this week I'll play. I've had it a couple of weeks. I've yet to actually try it. So,
yeah.
Got to shoot a demo on that. But I do want to get over, especially speaking of lockdowns, we're really close to going back into lockdown. So I really need to get over Long McQuaid before they go into lockdown again.
Is that true? Is that because are you having cases spiking as well over there?
Yeah, it keeps doubling by the day for the last week. It just came out of nowhere, so just boom, boom.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, brother. I didn't know that you guys were going to do that too. It's pretty much what's happening here in
Knock
Melbourne.
on wood. This seems to be, if you're going to get the strain, I'm just saying, you know, like my cousin got it. He had the sniffles for a day and a half. That's it, because he was fully vaccinated, and I was just like, you know what, that could work. They get it over with, you know. It's
no, look, I agree. Just get it over with. Most people I know that have it or have had it, even the new strain, they say it's essentially just like a regular flu if you're vaccinated. So yeah. Someone was saying something. Oh yeah, Michael Krause in the chat saying, and the good thing about a Blues Deluxe is if something happens to it or it dies or gets stolen, you're not in tears, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I totally agree.
I'd imagine that would be like if you had an average Plexi in the mid 70s, because that's what, you know, Marshalls were basically. So I would imagine, but even less so, because I guess it'd be like, because they're a more affordable ending amp too. It's not like you're shelling $2,000 for a twin or something.
No, it's exactly like that. Or you know, any of the more kind of boutique sort of amps as well, which even more than that again. The other really awesome thing with just one of those Fender combos is they're so ubiquitous, they're so everywhere that especially if you're doing any traveling or touring, there is no way you cannot find one of those for backline. So for me, if my little pedal board is set up to sound great with a Blues Deluxe, then I can just take the pedal board and know that in any city in the world, I can rent one of those for a gig and it'll be fine. That's the other really great advantage of that amp, actually, you know. And you know, Dan and Mick on the pedal show too also love that thing. And so for anyone that wants to keep a setup pretty simple and like a combo, they've probably got 3 or 4 completely separate videos of great pedals that you can use with that amp. So there's so much great information out there about it, you know.
I know, I don't know, at least about a dozen people that I've met through YouTube, at least that have them. And I don't know a dozen people that have another of the same thing, unless they like, I think I know a dozen people that have a Plexi, but not necessarily an actual what, you know, is there's a lot of people that own Plexi style heads, but it's not, but even then, you know, it's different. Because you can say, I know a bunch of people own a Blues Deluxe. I know a lot of people own a Hot Rod Deluxe or a DeVille, and they're all kind of the same family.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, little different gain stack and, you know, different speaker combos.
Yeah, that's right. They're going to vary a little bit, but your starting canvas, you know, to paint your palette, you know, onto.
Exactly. There's a reason I use the Blues Deluxe in every pedal demo I do.
Yeah, right.
For that same reason. This is a very generic amp.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've had a lot of people ask me about that, you know, what gear do you use when you're dragging that combo to a gig as well? So I was thinking maybe over the sometime in the next month, I might even do like a short little video of what pedals I personally use in front of it and that sound really good for me, you know.
Sure.
Because I think it's fascinating and it's a good I mean the other thing about it is, and I probably shouldn't admit to this, but sometimes when I travel interstate, I wouldn't do this now, but back in the day, I just didn't care. I've taken that from Melbourne to Sydney to Brisbane or whatever city and checked it in as check-in luggage at the airport and not even in a road case. So, and I promise that amp just gets to wherever it's going and then you turn it on and there it is, you know. These days, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd be too nervous. Something had happened to the valves, you know, but back then I was a bit more carefree. And the cool thing is
you pull the tubes, they go into a separate like flight case, a small flight case, like a microphone case. You can fit all your tubes in that, and then it ships without the tubes in it, and you're carrying them like they're precious cargo.
I used to do that actually. Back in the late 90s when I was touring with Men at Work and we were going to South America a lot, I used to travel with the Plexi, which I wouldn't do now either. But in those days, before all the virtual modeling stuff and all the options of backline that we have, I used to travel with the Plexi in a road case. And then I had one of those Voodoo Labs GCX switching systems with the pedals in a drawer. I used to travel also with that in a road case. And it was so much stuff. But what I used to do is pull out the tubes and I'd have them in this cute little, like you say, like a camera, like a Pelican camera case with the molded foam. And so, yes, I used to carry the tubes on me. And
that's epic.
Yeah. And put them back in.
This is why I love you, Simon. It's stuff like that. That's exactly why I love you. Stuff that's crazy. I think of something crazy. And you're like, been there, done that. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, look. Yeah.
You can do that when you have things like cartage.
Yeah. Well, look, obviously, the band had allowances for stuff like that, and the drummer was traveling with a lot of his drums road cased, which now I find completely laughable. I don't know any drummer that would travel with anything other than their snare and their cymbals in a cymbal case. But back then we were traveling with drums like toms and stuff, which I just find just nuts. Yeah. And the crew had road cases of all the stuff they needed, you know, and but you know, that was the 90s. I guess it's now everything's so much simpler, and also the backline's more reliable now, you know. back then you didn't know what you were going to get. And that was why I started touring with the Plexi back then, is because every time I rented a Marshall, it sounded like crap, you know. And whether it was you'd order a DSL 2000, you'd get a 900, and a 900 where the bass control didn't work or something, or it was unbiased, or the valves were shot. I think I could count on one hand in my whole life the amount of times I've rented a Marshall head and plugged it in and gone, wow, this head sounds great. So, you know, it's just part and parcel of that. But yeah. But so the good thing about my combo is doing all those miles on conveyor belts and being checked in at airports without a road case is my Fender, I bought it new in maybe the late 90s, but it looks like it's from the 50s. Like this thing, like all the Tolex is kind of ripped off it, and the wood's all dirty, and it's the grill cloth is kind of ripped everywhere. This thing looks like it's from the 50s. I could probably pretend that it was, and you know,
mine's starting to age now, but mine was in my showroom condition. The previous owner, it was in his bedroom the whole time. It's the son of the music store owner that I know. And it was his son's amp, never left his bedroom, and he always put the dust cover on over it when he was done. So, like, even the tweed hadn't aged from any sunlight or anything. I was just like, okay, it's aged more now just because I like to have it open and on display. I didn't like taking the cover off every time. But, Milton asked, "What is the red guitar over my shoulder?" That is my Kramer Focus 6000.
Cool. How long have you had that?
I picked that up 2-3 years ago when I drove to Sweetwater for their big Gear Fest event. And they had some used vendors there, which I prefer the used market. And I saw it and made a deal. Of course, did not claim it crossing the border back because I just bought a gig bag, scuffed up the gig bag, and I figured, you know what? It's an 80s guitar. Prove that I just bought it. It's a lot easier to say I've just owned it forever because it's an 80s guitar.
Yeah. It looks lovely, I have to say. It does look good.
There was only a couple minor dings in it when I got it. Basically, you know, a 9 out of 10. And then since then it's undergone a lot of FU-tone upgrades.
Oh, yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, very hot rodded a couple years ago and did all that upgrade stuff for the most part. Replaced the volume pot with the Bourne's pot just because. Yeah. I had a luthier here in Melbourne build me a kind of one-off, you know, custom Strat, and except we got rid of the middle pickup and we didn't put a pick guard on it either. And we decided to, because he was really into cars, I was really into cars. He had some friends that had some like red Ferrari 458s. So we decided to theme the guitar like a Ferrari 458. Nice.
In Ferrari red. So he managed to, through one of his colleagues, get the actual paint code from Ferrari for that particular model car. And man, that thing looked gorgeous as well. It's just that deep orangey red kind of Ferrari color. And all the parts on that were FU-tone. We just kitted the whole thing out. So it was like the supercar of guitars, you know?
Sure.
And unfortunately, I sold that to a student who made me an offer that I just could not refuse. And I sort of wish that I'd still had it, actually.
No doubt.
But at the time, you know how it is. Someone offers you an obscene amount of money and you just go, yeah, okay, it's yours.
Rico, hello, Rico. He says, thinking of selling his PV Wolfgang Special. If someone's interested.
Yeah.
Interesting. BC Rich says, I survived 10 years of gigging and 8 years of cats having totally destroyed the carpet on my bass cab. Yep. That's the one thing. My cat does not claw up my cabs. Loves the carpet in front of it. I think that's why I have the carpet in front. It's the only carpeted spot in the house, so cat gets drawn to it. Thank you, Janice. Happy New Year to you as well, all the way to Poland. Scott says I need another guitar to put FU-tone stuff he got on. I do.
Yeah.
I'll never say no to more guitars.
Is there anything that I wouldn't know about that you've recently acquired?
I don't think so. Not in the last few months. Just basically loaded up on a bunch of Lawrence pedals around October, November last year there.
Yeah,
Got his digital delay, got the chorus, got the reverb. They're all awesome. I can't go back to spring reverb. I'm all about the plate reverb sound now.
Yeah, I agree. The plate reverb's very cool, isn't it? And, you know, I think to my ears, a really great spring reverb sounds good, but there's just so few great spring reverb sounds, you know?
Yeah.
Because when they're not good, they do sound rattly and cheap, don't they? You know?
Like even the reverb in the Blues Deluxe, once you get past about 4, it gets kind of murky and, you know.
I agree. I actually don't ever use the reverb on the amp, but I do sometimes get a very, very short ambient reverb by using a delay pedal with the mix down crazy low and a really, really fast slap sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't actually hear it as a delay. It just sounds like the amp is kind of in a room. And I'll sometimes do that instead of using the amp reverb. It gives me what I think what the company were going for with the onboard reverb, but in a way that sounds much, much smoother and nicer to me, you know.
Sure.
So I'll sometimes do that.
I found I'm using a lot more delay now too. I used to be just strictly slap back and then now it's like 6 repeats, and because there's a tone control on that delay from Lawrence, the more you back off the tone, it sounds more analog, so you can get it so it's nice and crisp for 2 to 3 repeats and then start to decay. And I was like, wow, that's all right. I like that. I'm going to keep that.
That does sound very cool. Tell me, I don't know much yet about Lawrence's chorus pedal. Is that based on anything in particular, or is he doing his own thing with it?
I can't figure out what it's based on, if it's based on something, although my buddy Richie thinks it's actually based off an Electric Mistress. He thinks it is. And I was like, I don't know. He says that's what he hears. I plugged it in. I heard nothing.
And Lawrence himself, I suppose, is not giving away any secrets.
He just smirks, you know, shrugs.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm definitely going to have to check that out. That can be one of my new toys for this.
Lawrence is the only pedal builder, I think, that, you know, if for marketing, he acts like a psychoanalyst, because you're like, man, that chorus is great. You know, what does it sound like? Well, what do you think it sounds like?
Yeah.
Always turning it back around. It is the golden age of pedals, David. I agree. Has been for a while. Just keeps getting better.
Yeah, I agree with that too. You know, look, I've got to admit that I was even pretty late coming to the party with channels like That Pedal Show, you know, and even though I don't tend to be very much like a pedal player, like I'll use the amp and mostly in 1 or 2 things.
Sure.
But I have to say that even just watching Mick and Dan go down the rabbit hole of every conceivable thing is reignited my curiosity, you know, with pedals and all the different things you can do. And so, I mean, I've still got a bunch of rack gear, and that just doesn't even get turned on anymore, you know. I think it serves its purpose perfectly for some applications, but oh man, there's just so many amazing pedals out there now that it really is like being a kid in a candy store.
I agree.
Yeah. And all the money that I used to save to put towards like gear in my studio, the studio hasn't had any new gear for ages because it all goes on guitar pedals now.
I love it. Somebody had mentioned need to get a delay with an effects loop. Yes, I know. Was that DoD Rubberneck or the Analog Man ARD X20? I remember when I first started seeing that about 5 or 6 years ago. First time I saw it, delay pedals with an effects loop, because the guy's like, do you want a phaser on your repeats? I'm like, yes. Who doesn't? You know, because I dipped my toe into the water with the MXR Carbon copy having a modulated delay, and I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, chorus on your delay, and I was like, all right. And then it's the first time I heard phaser on a delay. I went, That's what I want. That's what I want.
Right. That sounds pretty cool.
Yep. Great for ambient stuff and
yeah. John ZD351 there saying he's bought pedals that sound way different when he plays it compared to when the seller played it. Yeah, I think you can only really purchase a pedal for yourself after hearing you play it. Obviously, you got such a great head start now. You know, jump on YouTube and hear people doing demos of the pedals. But I think that, like, even for me, I understand that when that pedal arrives, if I haven't played it in person before buying it, I've got to expect that it's not going to sound the way somebody else played it, because apart from the fact that they're using a different guitar and a different amp probably, but they got different fingers and a different brain, you know? So even their touch on the guitar will make the pedal sound a little bit different. So I think that, like, pedal demos are awesome to get you in a ballpark or to get you excited about the concept of the pedal. Like, yes, this is something I feel like I would want, but you've got to leave a little bit of discovery work for when you receive it yourself. You know?
Yeah. Let's see here. I saw a few things. Joe Hervey was asking if we liked Ottawas. I've only tried one in my HX Stomp once. Seemed cool.
I've got an old MXR auto wah pedal, Joe. Honestly, it doesn't get on the board that much, the touring board. It sort of kicks around at home and in the studio, and I might use it for a thing here or there. But you're also, I'm a kind of player, like, I use wah-wah generally pretty sparingly. So I would only even attach my wah-wah to my pedal board if the person I was working for required it, you know?
I've had wahs on my board. I used one once in one part of literally the bridge of one song when I played in one band. I used it really fast, almost like a tremolo effect.
Yeah.
Which I hated when we had to jam that song more than once in a row because my ankle was just shot after doing that for 20 seconds. But beyond that, every band I played in, the other guitar player had a wah. So I specifically did not have a wah for that exact reason. So
right.
You know, it's like, and if they played hardtails, well, then I might incorporate a trem just to be different.
Yeah. Look at these guys in the chat. Is there a more Canadian pedal than the Ottawa? I love it. I've never heard that one, actually.
I think somebody just released the Ottawa. It was a Canadian company, Solid Gold Effects, maybe.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that, but that's hilarious. Yeah.
Magic Man's hotboxing in his car like a teenager. It's great. Hey, I'll join you. I did see something earlier. Robbie Johnston. Simon, what's your go-to amp/overdrive pedal?
Oh, sorry. Who's asking?
Robbie Johnston was asking, what's your go-to amp? And then we'll say, and then with an overdrive pedal.
Okay. I'd have to say I've got two go-to amps. It's really hard to narrow it down to one, only because for the different things that I have to do in any given week. So it's horses for courses. Okay. Ben and I were talking just before, of course, about the Fender Blues Deluxe, single 12 valve 40-watt amp. I don't actually use the dirty channel in it. I just use the clean
There's
channel.
no point. It's basically edge of breakup. Even if you max the gain, it's barely broken up anyways.
Yeah. I just treat it as a one-channel clean amp, and then I use pedals in the front. I'll come back to the pedals in that I would use in a second. And the other one is just like a Marshall Plexi style amp. Those two things will give me anything that I need to do. The Fender will give me all my country tones. It'll give me any cleanish stuff. It'll even do the jazz stuff with my hollow body. Then if I put some pedals in the front, and especially if I use an EQ as well, I find that the EQ in the Fender a little bit limiting. Sometimes I like a bit more bottom end and a bit less mids, you know. So what I'll do for that is I'll use an EQ pedal. I've got a bunch of different EQ pedals. It could be anything. It could be the Boss one. The Friedman Buxom Boost is pretty good as an EQ and a boost. What else have I got? I've got like an MXR 10-band graphic as well. One of the old ones with the LED lights on each band, which is pretty cool looking thing to have on the board. But that sounds good. I mean, EQ, and I've got a Wampler EQ as well. And they all sound fine. And I only use that just so I can really, really shape the tone out of the Fender. And then as far as drive pedals, let me think. My favorites at the moment for rhythm sounds, I'll quite often use my old Rat.
Nice.
And those Rats just will sound good pretty much in the front of anything, So the Rat sounds good in front of the Fender, but it sounds good in front of the Marshall as well.
And the Rat takes a little getting used to. It's almost like a fuzz pedal. Like you have to learn to use a Rat. Like
I agree. I think that with a Rat, the trick is finding where its sweet spot is, because it's not sweet on any setting for me anyway. This is obviously just, I'm talking about me. I found that for a really cool, like crunchy rhythm guitar sound, that the Rat is one of my favorite things. I think, Ben, because it does have fuzz characteristics to it, and so I'll use that. That sounds great in front of the Marshall too. What else? I use a RC booster. And I think they're made by Exotic. Is that right? Does anyone know? I forget who makes that, but it's a yellow pedal called an RC booster. And and what I do is I use that to get from clean to gritty, like that chewy, like basically a clean amp turned up really loud. I use that pedal to get that sound.
Yep.
And one of my favorite guitar, like very smooth, saturated gain lead pedals at the moment, especially in front of the Fender Combo, is a Boiling Point by Rockbox. And I don't know if you've played that, but that thing is killer. It's really good.
Yeah. Nice.
So that's what I would probably use, and I've used for years, in front of my Fender. With the Marshall, that tends to change a little bit more. With the Marshall, I'm using the LPD Nice Drive A as like a boost to really punch that front end of the plexi. That just sounds mad. And don't worry, Ben, a video is still coming for that, I promise. I've just been so busy getting ready for the Van Halen show that I just haven't been in the sort of video making mindset.
It's all good because it's just going to drive up demand for it, and we're currently sold out, so it's all good.
Oh, good. Okay, so I've actually done you a favor by me being lazy. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, and Pete Thorne just went on tour. He left for England today to go on tour, so you still have lots of time, because I joked with him last week. He's like, or 2 weeks ago, he's like, I'm so busy before I got to leave on tour. I'm like, so you won't be demoing my pedal before you leave? And he just started goes, no. I was like, of course not, because I know other companies are paying him a lot of money to demo pedals, and I am not at all.
Yeah. No. Well, that's good. That means I can still hopefully sneak in front of him. Who's he in tour with in England with?
The Classic Rock Show.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And how long is he going to be over there for?
I want to say a month.
Yeah. Also, it's a pretty long.
Yeah, I think they do England, Scotland, Ireland, or I don't know. It's extensive. But I think they play 4 shows a week or 5 shows a week or something too.
Yeah. Yep. Well, okay, cool. Well, hopefully that, like we were talking about earlier, that the world comes to its senses and he gets to finish that tour without any interruptions and all of that,
Owner jams.
And someone else in the chat I just saw knows the Boiling Point pedal too and loves it. Who was that?
Oh, and Terry had posted a link. It's Carl Martin, Canadian company that does the Ottawa Auto.
Oh, it's Carl Martin. Cool. Great.
And a certain lurker who's watching sent a photo of the Ottawa. So there you go. Right. The vintage optical envelope, the Carl Martin Ottawa. I should get one. They should send me one.
I agree.
I should reach out to them. See if I remember that. And hello to everybody else joining. We got 73 people watching. Awesome.
Yeah, my to wrap up the amp conversation, to my belief is that if it can't be done with a Plexi and a Fender combo, it can't be done. Because to me, even all the other great amplifiers are kind of variations on those two templates. And really, with all the different pedals that you can put in front of either of those two amps, I mean, really, you talk about, I've seen some interesting videos online lately about, Jose modded Marshalls from the 80s and stuff that have surfaced.
Mm-hmm.
All that stuff is super fascinating to me too. But it really, when you get down into the deep dive of it, it's really just an extra gain preamp stage, and sometimes, of course, with an extra valve. But you can do that with a pedal. So you can, now that you basically get that extra gain stage in the front using a pedal. So in a sense, you can kind of customize your own Jose mods depending on what your flavors are. I think that's the beautiful thing about this renaissance of guitar pedals, is that now you've essentially got 100 options for your own Jose mod in front of a Marshall.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and,
I just think it's
hello to Dwight Bailey joining in. That's why I had to have the LPD 87, because I was like, so what's that? And he's like, well, like the green side, it's like a master volume Marshall. I'm like, okay, so 70s Marshall. He's like, yeah. I'm like, that's cool. And I'm like, what's the red channel? He goes, Jose modded Plexi. And I went, sold, because you said Jose, and nobody at the time was doing Jose modded. And I went, that's what I want, because that's different than a Soldano in a box that's also higher gain. And it's like, no, that's what I want. And he pretty much nailed it. So, or at least as far as I could tell. Adam says, get a G3, Ben. You won't regret it. I've talked to Rev. They seem all interested in doing something together. And then I reach them by the email and they're like, who are you? Never mind. But they make decent stuff. Different sound, different tone stack.
Yeah.
Exactly. Paul says Plexi is all you need, with a nice choice of Marshalls in a box. You have pedals for all of them.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that too, Paul. 100%. In fact, and I shouldn't say this because someone will probably jump ahead of me or tell me that it's already been done 10 times and burst my bubble. But I want to do a little video on why I think that the late 60s Marshall Plexi, or some new reissue version of it, is like the Swiss Army knife of all your classic guitar sounds, because depending on how you set the controls on the amp and what pedal you run in front of it, and of course what guitar you use, to me you can pretty much get any sound. So what I'm going to do, and I'll record them all in the studio, I'm going to deliberately try and get as close to each classic guitarist using nothing but a Plexi, a guitar, and one pedal, and the pedal will swap out, right? So it could be a Rat, or it could be an LPD, or it could be like an old DOD preamp overdrive, which I've got, which Malmsteen used to use. That sounds amazing in front of a Plexi, although it's noisy as hell. Eddie, of course, used to use a graphic just to boost the mids and some level. So I'm going to keep swapping out the pedal, and but you have the same amp and just change the settings and do a bunch of recordings. I think that'll be really fun, actually. See how close I can get. So we've got, well, obviously everybody knows you've got Eddie Van Halen by diming it and running an EQ in the front, or maybe an Echoplex pre, something like that. But essentially just an EQ in the front, boosting the mids and level. Malmsteen would run a Plexi,
more shrill,
not dimed. But what he would do is he'd turn down his controls, including the volume, to about somewhere between 12 and 2 o'clock. And then he would run his DOD overdrive preamp pedal totally dimed in the front end of it. So he'd get all his gain from the pedal, and the amp was set so it was distorted, but in a bluesy kind of way, And then you've got, of course, Steve Lukather on all those early Toto records, like the solo in Rosanna was just the Plexi dimed and a Les Paul, So, yeah. And there's so many others. I've got a whole list of different guys.
Well, and too, you plug in a pedal and you just hit a chord, you hear a band or a song. And it's whatever that EQ setting happens to be. And that's the funny that you can do a lot of that too. Just like, say, by tinkering with the amp and using different pedals, all of a sudden you hear that sound, you're like, yep, I hear it. And it's like,
I think that's the beauty of why I want to do the videos, because sometimes people assume that that you need you need to spend all your cash on different amps, different speaker boxes, different speakers within the box, different guitars, different pickups to emulate the sounds of your heroes. And I just think that that's not necessary at all. With one good amp and maybe a couple of different guitars, you know, one with single coils, one with humbuckers, and some different pedals, you'll be able to get pretty close to most of your heroes' sounds, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, it'll be fun. So I'll do that next month, maybe.
Exactly. That's like I can cover a lot of ground with my humbucker telly with coil tap. A lot of ground.
Absolutely. And that's why for me, if I've got to run to a recording session or something and I can take one guitar, I'll just take one of my Super Strats. It's got the next single coil, middle single coil, humbucker, and then, you know, a bunch of different pedals and stuff I'll just throw in a bag.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that Kramer, when I bought it, because I didn't even get to plug it in before I purchased it. I just played it, felt good. I went, okay, yep, let's do it. Yep. And it wasn't until I got back home, because I didn't have an amp with me in Indiana. I'm like a 10-hour drive from home. So I get home, I plug it in. I was like, damn, you know, because I figured it had a JB in the bridge. Somebody put a JB in the bridge. So I was like, sweet, you know, and I was like, well, that's that sound. Perfect. Which covers all that humbucker stuff. But I was shocked at the single coils in that thing. I was like, this thing is very Stratty sounding. Like, because you have just the neck. I was like, yep. Neck and the bridge together. Yep. Even using the humbucker in combo, still very, very Stratty, to the point where I left it at the rehearsal space for the last band at Richie's house. And he at that time, he was playing nothing but Strats, Tellys, and a couple jazz boxes he had. Like, he's just very traditional, but it's sitting there, and, you know, he's playing one day. So I guess he had picked it up and played it a bunch. And I come to the next practice, it's like, that thing there. I'm like, yeah. He's like, it's quite the chameleon, isn't it? I'm like, it is, isn't it? It's quite versatile. He's like, I cannot believe how Stratty that thing sounds. I'm like, I know. If I was to show up at a session, I'd take that over my Strat.
Yeah, right.
It just sounds a little more Stratty than a Strat. So,
and that's right, because if you're not using your eyes, it doesn't matter, does it? Because it should just be what sounds right with the ears. You know?
Yep.
Hey, have you seen that video? There's a video on YouTube of Hendrix live playing a Fender stack, and the speaker cabinet had aluminium JBLs in it, like those ones that Eddie. Yeah. And guess what? Sounds exactly like any Hendrix recording you've ever heard, and he's using the exact opposite of what people know him to use, which is, you know, the Marshalls with greenbacks. He was using Fenders with JBLs, and you know, it sounds exactly like it. So at the end of the day, too, I think, I mean, ultimately, you could probably plug Mike Landau into 4 different rigs, and he'll just always sound like Mike Landau in pretty much in each rig, you know.
Right.
So I think really most of it comes from the hands and the heart and the mind. But all this stuff is definitely fun, you know. It's like I was saying, in the last couple of years, my passion for exploring different pedals and even other bits of different gear too, you know. We really, I do feel, I can't remember who said earlier, but it is a golden age for guitarists at the moment, because even though that sort of guitar music isn't the prevalent thing on mainstream radio,
it's still expanding. That's the weird thing. For it shrinking globally, but the bubble within it's in is like expanding from within so much.
Yeah. It's like the country itself, the landmass is shrinking, but the population inside it is growing, you know?
Yeah. And we have the room for it. That's the wonderful part.
We do. And
more new guitars came out. Hey, we all have room for more guitars. Bring them on out. Sure.
Yeah. And, you know, it's such a interesting and wonderful time to be a guitarist of anything, but especially electric guitar. That it's funny, as much as technology keeps moving into modeling and all of that other really crazy, clever stuff, there's equally as many boutique designers making analog stuff still, you know, and so we've really got the best of both worlds. There's someone in the chat asked earlier about modeling stuff. I think it's fine if you look at it like that it's a compromise and you're serving a different purpose all of a sudden, because obviously, you know, a lot of the the big touring guitarists and bands that would go around with the Katy Perrys and whoever else. Those shows are all worked out and they're to a click. And so all their patches are even getting changed via MIDI. And in that situation, and there's no amps on stage because it's all about the show and the dancers and all of that. So if you're part of a pop show, I think that it makes perfect, and your in-ears especially, that makes perfect sense to use a modeler, because using a real rig then is just going to be a pain in the butt, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's what they're the best at. But I think if you're just a guitarist that plays at home for your own enjoyment, I say buy the old gear if that's what turns you on.
Yeah.
You know,
I've always been an advocate for, like, you know, you can start it with the virtual, get an idea, you know, like, hey, I don't know what a phaser pedal sounds like. All right, well, don't go out and just buy one. Try out a virtual one. It's free, basically. And you're like, oh, I dig these. Okay, then go out and get the real thing, because I like having the tangible, get my hands on. So that's my big thing. I don't like rotating mouse wheels, and no, I like to plug in, and stuff breaks, and I that's fine, you know. Stuff gets old and it sounds different as it ages. It does sound different as it ages, even electronics. You know,
absolutely.
I don't know. The silicon chips are curing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think especially if you're a young guitarist starting out, actually, even if you're an old guitarist starting out and you're just getting into electric guitar, I agree. Buy some sort of a modeling thing like Ben's saying, where you can try out what all the different effects sound like. And then if you want to like spend some more cash and get tactile with it, and so you've got something physical that you can hold in your hands, it looks cool and it's got knobs on it, but at least then you're not going to be throwing your money after pedals that you want to sell in 1 week, you know?
Yeah. And if you want to go the other route of just going tactile, you can buy the cheaper pedals off, say, Amazon or something like that. And if they work out for you, because a lot of them are clones of decent pedals, and if it leads you down the road to then start buying more boutique stuff,
yeah,
you know, fill your boots. That's great.
I agree. Like even my recording studio, it's just my little room here at home. I've got like all this outboard gear in it that I don't need that. Everyone knows you can do it all inside a computer these days. Some mix engineers that even mix number one songs do it on a laptop in their hotel room with headphones now. You know, you just don't. But I still want it. I often will have someone come in the studio to work with me and they'll go, how come you've got all this stuff now? And it's like, because I like it, you know,
because it's cool.
I like it when I flick a switch and a red pilot light comes on, and that there's knobs I can turn when I want more treble, you know. Like Ben's saying, I'm tactile too. And that's more fun for me, because really
sometimes I just want to play loud.
Yeah.
You know, and there's something about a 12-inch speaker rattling my pant legs that is cool.
Yeah. To me, look, making music should just be fun. So if it's more fun for you to be like physically touching pedals and swapping them around and using patch cables and doing all of that, then great, then that's what you should do. But if that drives you crazy and what's more fun for you is buying a virtual modeling thing so you can flick through these insane sounding patches at one button, then that's for you, you know? So,
yo, Gary. See Gary and Big G in the house.
And actually, John was asking a question just now in the chat. John, you're asking, what about a head and a DI box? Do you mean like a head and a load box? John, can you be more specific? If that's
what I would think. Yeah. Because then you could go like direct out into a board or something from a head. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, I guess. Like, let's say in that pop situation, if you're playing a plexi into a load box of some kind that has an out, like one of those aux boxes or...
Yes, because there's so many great options for load boxes now and reactive loads and stuff. So, John, if that's what you mean, then yes, I do that too. The truth is that the plexi or any kind of version of a plexi is without a reactive load. If you're cranking that thing to get a rock sound without any pedals in the front, that is just going to tear your head off, and no one in the band will want to play with you, you know? So for me, I use it with a reactive load, and like even for example, the Van Halen show I'm doing later this month, that's how I'm running the rig. So I'm using the plexi into a reactive load, and then I'm taking like a line level split, which I guess, John, is your meaning of the DI, and then I'm driving all my outboard effects with that, and then running that back into 2 Marshall half stacks, left and right. And I'm using the master volume on those essentially just as a power amp for my overall volume for the left and right. So a pretty standard kind of wet, dry, wet way of doing it. But yes, to answer your question, I think if you were a touring guitarist and you had to have no boxes or volume on stage, but you still wanted to use your valve head and you had the crew to lug it around and stuff, then yeah, I think that's a really good way to go, actually. Yep.
I dig it.
Yeah. Why not?
He says he's got John's got a B100 into a Captor X to front a house.
Well, there'll be nothing wrong with the sound of that rig, brother. That B100 is a beast, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that we were talking before about how you can make a Plexi sound like a modern amp depending on what pedals you run in front. I think the genius of what Dave does is that he's essentially making all those musical decisions for you with his circuitry for himself, which means you don't need to try and futz around for 12 months, 24 months with what pedal do I run in front of it. He's made all the decisions for you by his years of experience and his ears. And man, the BE 100 is, I have to say, is one of my favorite sounding new Marshall type amps, you know.
Right.
So John, that'll sound killer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I still personally like some speakers flapping behind my pants, you know, on stage. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be really, really loud. I just can't deal with my rock guitar sound only coming through my fallback in front of me. It just sounds a bit too shrill. And obviously you've got in the fallback, it's full range. So you've got a tweeter in there as well. No one wants to hear rock guitar through a tweeter right at their face.
Hey, Kelly.
So yeah.
It's funny because like whenever I've gigged, only a handful of times my cabinet has ever even been mic'd on stage, because we would just put vocals through the PA. Because if we're bringing the PA, we're not running extra cables to mic the drums, mic all the cabs, and no, because I had to be the sound guy as well as the guitar player and backing vocals. So no, that's not. It was bad. Like we ran mics for everybody, and basically we were just trying to keep the stage volume down enough that we could hear ourselves through the wedges to sing. You know, that was it. And then otherwise we're just cranking up to keep up with the drummer. And as he got more excited, we had to crank up louder. That's the way it worked. And so I've only ever played loud for the most part. And I've hated it when they're like, no, we got your mic, you can turn down. I'm like, no, that's my sound. What I'm hearing, it sounds good, but that's not me. It sounds better than me, but that's not me. Because when you're playing a real nice place with a professional sound man, he makes you sound better. You're like, really? That's me? Wait, no, this is my rig. I know what I sound like. That's not me. That sounds sweet. And they're like, yeah, we know what we're doing. I'm like, apparently you do. But please take me out of the mix, because that's not me. I'd rather stand back more the AC/DC style. I'll play back by my amp until I need to sing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even the trio rock covers gig that I just did for New Year's Eve, it was a small room, small stage, and a sound check, and I was using an open back 30 watt 112. So I mean, small gear, right?
Sure.
and even at that, and I was running the amp clean just with a few pedals in the front, so not very loud. And the sound guy comes up to me, he says, listen, everything's cool, but if you could turn down a bit, that would be great. And my answer to him is, hey, I'm only playing as loud as I need to hear myself, given that I'm standing 2 feet from the drummer. So if the drummer wants to play quieter, I can be quieter as well. But the truth is that guitar amps were invented to keep up with the sound acoustically of things like drums, you know? So
hey, Mars man.
For me on stage, my sort of, what do you call it, plumb line, or however you want to say it, my sort of reference point is I like to just hear roughly a balanced mix where I'm standing. I don't need me to be crazy louder than the rest of the guys in the band, but I also don't want the bass and the drums to be louder than me where I'm standing. I want to hear a balance of the guitar.
Yeah.
So
I got to know if I flubbed a note. Otherwise, I'm going to keep playing it that same way because I'm playing it wrong, apparently. Hey, robot.
I just we live the last few decades, sound engineers for live gigs just done my head in for the most part. There's obviously a couple of exceptions of great people that get it, but I would say mostly they're so used to now mixing everything because of virtual modeling guitar amps and pods and all that stuff, where you know, in all their corporate work, the guitarists are just plugging straight into the PA. And so when you turn up with an amp, even a tiny amp, they're like, oh, no, we don't want any guitar sound coming off stage. And so I've had sound guys ask me to turn down at sound check before I've even turned the amp on. And that's what, I'm a pretty cruisy guy, but that's what I see red if someone tells me to turn down before they've even heard me, you know?
Oh, yeah. Or, yeah, the groans just went during load-in. Like, I remember we would show up because we were the band that had half stacks because everyone else was playing combos and stuff. Or a lot of the half stacks were like crate solid state half stacks, so you could turn them down because they're solid state.
Yeah.
They look like half. But then we'd come in, I was using solid state, but mine's 100 watts at 4 ohm. It's loud as fuck. And then And then the other player, he was running a Marshall, and then a couple times we were running full stacks for the hell of it, and the sound guy's just like, oh god, no, not full stacks. This is a club. And it's like, yeah, but it looks cool. Don't worry, we'll only plug in half of it. It'll still be loud.
That's right.
And that's the great thing about running a full stack. I only wanted the top cab working anyways, because all of a sudden I'm like, boom, I can hear myself now because it's right at my head.
Yeah, like I'm really, really lucky that for the Corner Hotel gig, I've got a sound guy who's actually happens to be my amp technician. So, so he works on Marshalls, loves Van Halen, and when I sort of nervously when he said, "So what are you thinking of using on stage?" I'm so used to being nervous about telling the front of house guy what that's going to be,
right?
That it was almost apologetic. I was like, well, I was thinking maybe if it was all right with you that I could use like a wet, dry, wet with some Marshall boxes. And I said, I'd love for the look of it to use full stacks instead of 3 half stacks. And he goes, fuck that, use 3 full stacks and turn it up, dude, And and I was like, okay, cool. I've definitely got the right front of house guy for this show. It's going to be great. But, but it can just be for the looks. And like I was saying before, honestly, I probably won't be that loud on stage. I'll be just loud enough that it's equal volume with the drums and the bass guitar and everything else.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You set a rig like that just loud enough to sound good, to make everything work properly even. It's going to sound loud because you have so much going on that it's just that ambient loud. It's not that focused loud.
Yeah, it's not that sort of ray beam at the mix engineer's head. It's going to be dispersed because there's so many cabinets. Yeah, that's right. It's interesting, but it's you've got to fight as a guitarist these days to. Man, if I had $5 for every time I've been told to turn down, wouldn't need to actually do any more.
Owner Jams, thank you very much, my friend. He says, hope everyone starts off the new year with a great week. Work hard. Don't let anything hold you back. Then 2022 looks good on you, handsome. Thanks, buddy. Awesome. You can get an amp. I tilt my amp back quite a bit when I run a combo amp, Joe, for that reason. Otherwise, if it's just level, it shoots across my pant legs and I can't hear it as well. So I do tilt mine back a bit. And I have a little tilt back unit that stays in the back of the amp all the time, so I never lose it. So, although the one nice thing I was thinking, the one thing I like about playing outside, for instance, you notice you always have to turn up your amps more outside. And I'm like, ooh, that means I get to go past 4.
Yeah.
I really get to work the tubes. Nice.
Yeah, when I was young and playing in my first cover bands, I used to hate when we did outdoor gigs because I only had a tiny Fender combo, which sounded great in a house or in a room or wherever else. But as soon as you took it outside, it sounded like nothing. It sounded like a mosquito dancing on the dashboard of your car,
Right.
So, yeah, that was when I realized, oh, okay, that's why people use Marshall stacks,
Yeah. I remember the first time I gigged with a telly outside. What happened? My cool brightness is turned to more just thin shrillness. And then also, I think I took the bass control and went from my usual 4 to 9. on and dialed out some mids and pres. It's like, okay, and we'll just turn up some more volume, really start pushing it.
Yeah. Scott Brockway asked something before that I saw, but I can't find the question. Sorry, Scott.
He said when the sound guy is used to doing DJs and dance music, they just don't know how to handle live band. True. A solution: bring your own sound guy. Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously you don't always get to, and especially if you're doing corporate work and stuff. But yes, that is a good solution. Just bring your own, because that's exactly right. They're used to mixing DJs now. Yeah. They're basically.
I've gone up to many sound guy, and he's like, "What do you want about your guitar?" I'm like, "No, actually," and I immediately go, "No, vocal wise." I'm like, I'll ask, "How many band EQ are you running on the board? Is it 3, 4, 5?" He tells me. I'm like, "Okay, for me, can you take some of this out, add some of that, because I know what I sound like through an SM58." Yeah. And then I'd say, "My singer, you're going to want to do this, this, this." He goes, "Okay, what about the other guys?" I'm like, "Doesn't matter. They just scream. It does. It really does.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
No, like one guy, literally, all he does is guttural screams at certain points during the songs. And that's fine. So, yeah, I was like, no, I need to be here. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I know what it was that Scott said. I think he was saying about, we're obviously talking about using reactive loads then, so you can work your amp hard and keep your stage volume nice and low. And he was talking about the Fryette power station. I agree. That thing is a great, incredible piece of gear. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's what apart from, pedals and all this stuff, like the first stage things, now we've got all this back end stuff like, the Boss TAE or the Fryette power station and the UA thing, it's now you can drive your amp to get the juicy, gorgeous tone that you've always wanted, but it always annoyed you because it was too loud, even in your home. And now we can do all of that. That's why, that's, to me, I totally put that equipment also into this golden age of guitar stuff that we're living in,
Yeah, equipment, it's never been built better. It's reliable.
Yep.
Thoughts on active pickups? Joe asks.
Oh, hey, Joe. I don't actually have any guitars with active pickups, but that's not because I don't think that they have their use and their sound. I just personally don't do the kinds of work where I would be getting that sound, But some of my favorite guitar players from the 80s used active pickups, Steve Lukather being an obvious example, I was actually reading something the other day, and I didn't know this, but apparently they were originally invented mainly to just get rid of that single coil hum.
That's why my dad installed EMGs in his telly that I now have, because of playing in so many venues that had bad wiring. He played telly directly into a Vibralux, loud and clean. So he wanted, he was sick of all that buzzing. So he had heard about these active pickups and picks them up, and they've been in that guitar since 1985, I think.
Yeah, right. Well, and they would sound great, right?
Oh, they do. Yeah, it's like that thing rocks. I can't believe how well that thing sounds, and it sounds telly-like, but it sounds different too. Like if you want to play rock, it rocks just as hard. It actually rocks harder than most tellies because of the actives. Yeah, it just works better for it.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be pretty cool, actually. Yeah. So yeah, obviously they were invented to solve a problem, and then people learned that they had their own sound, and of course, one of the things that they're awesome for is that classic clean chorus 80s sort of Strat sound where, you plug straight into the mixing desk kind of thing, and it's like super, super clean and shimmery, Nothing beats an active pickup for that. That's where they come into their own,
But, Michael B? Yeah. Like that Purple Rain tone.
Yeah, exactly like that. Or like those clean sprong tones from like Mr. or something like that. Yeah, killer. I've actually got I've borrowed from a good friend of mine his Steinberger, which he remade the body for because there was something happened with the original carbon fiber body. So he remade it out of wood and then retrofit all the original parts, the trans trim and the active pickups and stuff back to it. And man, that thing sounds wild in front of the Plexi. It's so unusual because the pickup sounds so different to a passive pickup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really nuts. Yeah.
I'm not switching pots in the EMG, Scott. You and your bright pots. The guy likes his 1 meg pots on everything. And
who's that?
And I didn't even see his follow-up comment, Scott Broccoli. There goes Scott with the loud pot thing again. Exactly.
Yeah.
He's a wild one.
Talking about noise, I saw an interview with Dave Friedman online somewhere where he was saying that he can't remember the last time he's actually had to put a noise gate into a system for people. But back in the 80s, they were all doing it, and I guess that's what the active pickup thing was born to solve. But apparently, people are just they'd rather have the sound of their vintage style passive pickups and put up with a bit of noise. And yeah, it's interesting to hear Friedman saying that he doesn't even build noise gates into people's rigs anymore.
Mm-hmm. And it's probably like stuff is just better shielded now because a lot of times it was interference with lighting rigs. That's why guys like Gilmore had switched to active pickups. He's like, hey, my rig hasn't changed. They're like, yeah, but the production has. You want lasers and lights and this and that. And your guitar does not like that.
John saying the Rocktron Hush. Yeah, everyone had those in the rack back in the day, didn't they? In fact, I didn't even, when I was like 14 years old, I didn't even know I didn't even know really what the Rocktron Hush did, but I used to see it in the racks of so many rock guitarist magazines. I was like, man, I got to get me one of those Rocktron Hushes. I bet that thing is cool.
That's the secret to good tone right there.
It's the secret is the Rocktron Hush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hit Metalworks is saying Tone Talk. Yeah, it would have been on Tone Talk. That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, see you, Rico. He's got to head out. His drummer's on TV tonight. Well, I hope it's on something entertainment and not on the news. You never know with drummers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that, John. That was in the 80s into the 90s. He's back to the passives now. Yeah, because now that stuff's gone digital, because a lot of that stuff was probably just heavy-duty analog electrical work. Yeah. Now they got all the LED lights and stuff now.
Hey, give me 1 second, Ben. I'll be right back.
Sure. What's up, Hit Metalworks? Fluence Classics in your number 1, John Shane. No match for the Fralins. Interesting. I do not need any more noise gates, Paul. I still have several. I rock Zed Blues. Yeah, Tone Talk's a great show, Joe. And everybody else. How can you not like Tone Talk? Mark and Dave. Nice. So did anybody get any new gear for Christmas? I think I asked that on last Monday's show, but curious. Or last Sunday. I might ask it then too. What's up, Leo? You got 73 people watching. You need more phasers. Yep. I think I had 5 or 6 flangers this year, Michael. This is the year of the flanger. I want to get into flangers this year. Well, we'll find out. Scott got 7 pedals. Nice. Tinks had a few too many cold snacks. That's fine. Jay Steen's here. Very nice. Let's see here. Joe was asking if you still practice.
If I still practice? Yes, I do. As much as I can, actually. Over over Christmas, like really most of December, I've been pretty slack because, Christmas, New Year's, different things happening. But when I'm in a routine, I like to practice, a couple of hours every day if I can. But that doesn't have to be, look, it's good when it's what I would call like really sort of deliberate regimented practice. But honestly, it can be just like if I'm watching something on TV, I'll have the guitar on the couch, just not plugged in, just going through some exercises. And I find that I can get most of the boring technical stuff that I'm trying to work on out of the way just while I'm watching a TV show,
Nice.
So that it doesn't have to feel like you're
regimented.
And that you're not relaxing, because sometimes people say, look, I've been working all day and I just really want to pour a beer or something and put my feet up. I don't really want to just then have to concentrate on something for another 2 hours. But to me, I call practicing just the same, sitting on the couch watching the TV with an unplugged guitar in my hands,
Sure, that works. Looks like tomorrow is Paul Ewing's 75th birthday. Happy diamond birthday.
Happy birthday.
That's awesome. And happy retirement to Marsman. Got retired for Christmas. That's awesome. I remember when I got to meet Marsman a couple of years, a year and a half ago now, in person.
Based.
He is in Illinois, in the Marseille, Illinois, Joliet, Illinois area. So outside Chicago. Yeah, I got to meet up with him before heading to Summer NAMM one year. And he was talking about his retirement. He's like, I got this much time left. And then after that, I'm getting crazy into guitars. So time to get crazy into guitars, Marsman.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no better time.
And apparently Charles got himself a new Canucks with Guitars t-shirt for Christmas. Nice. Best dressed.
Yeah. Actually, John is also saying, that's how he practices on the couch watching something. Well, John, what I'm actually going to do, I can give this to you, is I was thinking it might be fun for me to just put together in a tab or a video or something, all the things that I play on the couch watching TV. And so, you're welcome to it, brother, if that's interesting.
Magic Man says, can anyone recommend a sexy leather strap, 3-inch plus, preferably black? A Levy strap. They make lots of cool black leather straps.
Who's that, Ben?
Levy.
Cool. Actually, let me go I'll show you guys my favorite strap that it seems to migrate its way from guitar to guitar.
Sure.
And unfortunately, it'll damage the paint because it's got a huge buckle on it, but I don't care. I like the strap too much. So,
well, Marsman, if you need to move anything, call Aaron. Aaron is in gear acquisition mode. Perry's, another Canadian company. This one I've had for a few years now. Really comfortable.
No,
I got this also while I was at Sweetwater. A nice suede, really soft calf suede.
That looks
strap.
great.
Guy was selling them. I guess he made them and was selling them or whatever in the flea market area. So I bought one for me and one for Buddy Bruce because they're dirt cheap. I was like, that's less than half of what they should be. So I'm like, I'll snag one of them up. I love this thing.
That's cool.
It does not move when playing shirtless at all. So it'd be great for guitar with neck dive.
That's very cool. I couldn't find the strap. Must be somewhere else that I've left it in the car or something. But essentially what it is, it's like a late 70s Chevy seatbelt. So I don't know what that material was they made that stuff out of, but
nylon, I think.
Nylon, maybe, yeah. It's that black, and it's sort of got like a crisscross pattern in it, like a weave. But it's really cool, and it's got a huge clip, the actual seatbelt clip on it as well.
Oh yeah, I have sort of that style. This one's more, it's the real soft seatbelt type material. But this one by D'Addario
Oh, yeah.
It's got the clips on it, so it'll fit on anything, and it just click and locks right on.
Yeah, I think I've got to get some of those. I'm tired of struggling.
Absolute Mayhem in the chat. He bought it, and he bought one because he's like, he loved it because he always plays with a strap, and it fits on any kind of, even strap lock buttons fits on, no problem.
Wow, that's.
And then he left it here, and he's like, "Yeah, you can have this one," and I just leave it in here because it fits. Hell, like a 17 guitar sitting right here. So
yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, because I've got a lot of those. I got so tired of my guitar coming off the strap when I was doing big gigs that I've got those. You can get those little separate circular things that you kind of attach to the strap nut, and then you turn it around and it locks the strap in. But actually, I guess that's good if you've got your favorite strap you want to use. But that D'Addario thing that's perfect.
Yeah, like I used the Shaler style that Fender ripped off for the longest time. With the big buttons on them.
Yeah.
But the problem was every time I sold a guitar, you'd forget to switch the damn strap buttons off the guitar.
Yes, it's a problem when you're selling guitars. And also, sometimes those little tiny, little tiny balls inside the mechanism that kind of lock, if they get a bit kind of stuck, and a bit old, and then it won't lock, and then the guitar will come off as well.
I started buying the Fender ones because they were like 30% cheaper in price than the Shalers. We'll get to that, John. But I found, the machining wasn't as precise. So they were only locking in half the time. Mm-hmm. And so they were falling off, or once they were on, I couldn't get them back off again. And 20 minutes after a gig trying to get the damn strap off the guitar, and I'm ready to throw the guitar across the room by the time I get it off. You're so frustrated. So then I ended up taking most of them and filing them by hand, filing all the edge. I'm like, okay, now it's nice and loose. That's what I want. Because I like my Shalers. Once they worked in after a year or so, I really liked them. And John says, Haas, where can I find you a couch practice
regime? I'm actually still putting it together, John. It doesn't currently exist online or whatever, but I promise I can send it to you as the first person to check out and see if you think it's any good or not. If you like that, you can be my proofreader,
nice,
and see if it works. So yeah, I'll probably finish that up in the next week or two. And hit me up on social media, brother. I'll send it across.
See a few people talk about different strap locks. I dig it.
Yeah.
A comfortable strap makes a gig a lot easier. That's for sure.
Yeah. Hey, I did something about 10 years ago that really helped for me, because I used to I was fed up with, I do all this practice at home, and I would practice on my, like everyone does really, with the guitar on my right leg. And then I would get up at a gig, and obviously I'm standing. The guitar is in a completely different spot. So the bend in your wrist is different. Everything is different. And with especially when I was doing those kind of crazy fusion gigs with Virgil Donati, I just found that stuff was hard enough for me to play even sitting down. When I stood up and my wrist position changed, I just found I was struggling through the gig and not having any fun. So I thought I've got to be able to streamline this somehow. So I figured out that with the guitar on my left leg, the guitar's much, much closer to the position that the body will be in when you're standing up.
Right.
And then the next thing I did is I just raised my strap a little bit, not too much. I didn't want it to be like super high, obviously. Still playing rock and roll here.
Unless you play like Eddie, you can't wear it that high. Well, you do play like Eddie, so you can wear it that high, Haas.
No, I don't want to wear it that high. I don't even. I know this will sound lame, but I just don't even think it looks cool.
I would like to have tried on Eddie's guitar strap length, because I know he wore it high, and I think he's about 5-6 inches shorter than me. So I'd probably put it on and be like under my armpit.
Well, you can see even in like a really good example where you can see how high he actually wears it is the Live Without a Net video, because he's wearing that utility belt and it's sitting higher than his belt. Yeah. And most guitarists won't wear the guitar higher than their belt. But anyway, so what I did was I sort of compromised it, and Actually, I'll just grab a guitar and I'll show you what I mean. Hang on, I'll scooch the screen down. So what I would do is have it on my left leg, and then I would set the strap so that when I stood, it kind of stayed in the same position.
Sure.
Like that. And it might not be like exact, but it would be close enough that, you know, for all the hard licks, then it was more manageable, you know?
Sure.
And that really helped me. That meant I was having way more fun at my gigs playing all the hard stuff after I did that.
John says, I put a short strap on my Rick copy for an extra Beatlish goodness. Angus plays up high. Yes, he does.
Yeah, Angus plays high. That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Excuse me. Rick Emmett, yes.
Yeah. Hey, Terry, you asked something in the chat much earlier that I think was directed specifically at me, and I forgot what it was, brother. So if you can remember, write it again.
And I will say, thanks to Terry's been putting links to your socials in the chat here as well throughout the evening.
Cool. Thank you, Terry. Happy New Year too, brother. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Playing guitar for a living is hard enough without things like that your guitar's in a different position from when you practice to when you do a gig. So I like to try and eliminate as much of that stuff as possible. You know.
Well, yes, Mayhem. I also play high. Pretty much go through life that way.
Yeah, Tom Morello, Terry saying plays it up pretty high as well.
Yep. Vernon Reed. Yep.
Oh yeah, Vernon. Yeah. Yeah.
And Charles says, I don't care how high my strap is if it sounds good. Yep.
That's true. I think there's a limit though for me. You know, I don't want it up next to my neck if I'm playing rock and roll. But yeah, I guess if you're playing jazz or something, then that doesn't matter at all then. But, yeah. In fact, it's probably the opposite. I wonder if jazz players complain about when other jazz guys have their guitar too low.
Yeah. Look at that guy. He's wearing so low.
Yeah,
he looks like a fool.
He looks like a tool when that jazz guy wears it low. Yeah.
He's wearing so low, he's going to actually give his guitar a buckle rash.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Yep, not me.
Nah.
I know I used to wear it higher, and then it went low, and then it slowly crept back up over time, and that's due to more dexterity issues as well.
Yeah.
And then, especially when I'm playing in here, I'm like, I don't need to wear it this low. Who am I impressing? Me? The cat? Like, you know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So just cinch it up more.
Yeah. Robot's got it right. You should be able to press your junk up against the body. Too high, junk exposed. Too low, junk exposed. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Keep it in the PG-13 area.
Yeah. That's right. Terry was about Hendrix. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was when I was talking about Hendrix playing the Fender, and you said it was, the Jules Showman. That sounds right. Yeah, I saw that somewhere. I might have even seen that actually on Steve Fryette's show. I think they were talking about, you know, specifically that issue of, you know, people would say, Hendrix never played anything but a Marshall and made it sound so good, but actually turns out to not be true. So, you know.
David says his belly is pushing his guitar higher. The more rotund players generally play the guitar higher.
Yes. Because otherwise the guitar's too far out from your body, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Scott. Frank Gambale plays a little high for me too. I always thought that. I used to watch some of his instructional videos when I was a teenager, and I always thought, yeah, you're playing like an absolute freak, but your guitar's up pretty high. Yeah.
I remember I kept going lower and lower because I was playing strictly rhythm, so I didn't need a lot of dexterity, and it was like, how low can we go? Yeah. And I got to the point where the Les Paul was no longer getting buckle rash. It was completely below the belt buckle. Right. Kept going lower. And then I went to jump up on a monitor or something and I banged the top of my kneecap off the guitar and that killed like a son of a bitch. I'm like, she's got to come back up now because I can't move around with it this low because I'm damn near hitting my knee off of it.
Yeah. I discovered the depths of what was too low for me when I was playing in this rock covers band 15 years ago, and mainly using a Les Paul. And I was
just with a Les Paul.
Yeah, no, well, Les Paul just does look a bit weird when you put it up too high, you know? So I thought, okay, I'm going to wear like the big open shirt and the jewelry and you know, sling it really low, like Slash, whatever. And I got to a point where it's like, okay, that's the point that's too low. I can't play now, you know? My wrist was bent at such a strange angle, you know?
Yeah, exactly, Scott. I was playing through an MXR full bore metal into the Fender. Which always got a lot of weird looks too. You have a Fender half stack? Yes, I have a Fender half stack.
That's cool. That's very cool.
And that'll start too because I messed up my shoulder, so I couldn't raise my hand to play very well. So I had to play super low.
Yeah.
I bet you they were cool, Zach. He used to hang out with the band The Fuzz. I don't know them, but I like the name.
Yeah.
Unless it's a cop cover band. They could be called The Fuzz. And they're probably cool cops then. If they're a bunch of cops playing in a cop band and they're called The Fuzz.
Yeah.
Oh, I used all the gain. Exactly, Joe. I used all the gain with the full bore metal. There is no low gain setting with that thing. It's off and then it's all the gain.
Actually, speaking of all the gain, let me grab this. Ben, you already know I have this, but for anyone that doesn't, this thing in the front of the plexi, woo-hoo!
That's all the gain.
Oh, that's all the gain you need. That thing, and I'll do a video on this too, because I was going down the rabbit hole of I've got like a duck yellow Strat, sort of a la Yngwie Malmsteen with high output pickups and all of that. And I thought, I wonder with the plexi, because I was doodling around with the Van Halen sound, thinking, how close can I get to Malmsteen sound, knowing that he also used, back in the day, he used a late 60s plexi, sometimes early 70s, I think. But he used the DOD overdrive preamp, and I thought, that's a pretty gainy old pedal, but it's, like I said, it's noisy as hell. And then when I got the LPD, I thought, I bet you that's in the ballpark, and man, that sounds awesome in front of the plexi. So yeah, I can't wait to do the video on that. And with the Strat with the high output pickups, sounds exactly like early 80s Yngwie. Killer.
I'm not going to say who it was, but there's a YouTuber that demoed the 87 and he was playing it into a dirty rev amp. And it's like, dude, you got to, and he never played it on a clean amp. I was like, you got to at least try it through a clean amp or edge of breakup.
Yeah.
And especially the red channel, because it got kind of fizzy when he's playing the red channel into a, at least medium gain setting. I was like, that's a bit much.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't RJ.
No, obviously I'm talking about using the plexi in its kind of 12 o'clock bluesy setting. Yeah,
that'll sound amazing.
I can't wait for you to hear
it. The funny thing is, because I have the deluxe, so I have the green channel set to basically your plexi set. Like, it's just broken up.
Yeah.
Bluesy it's a little past edge of breakup, but just into breakup. And then because I love goosing it because it acts so much like an amp that I'll hit it with other pedals all the time. So that's my clean now.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, look, some distortion pedals they really are designed to be played in front of a very clean amp, and the cleaner the amp, the better that distortion pedal is going to sound. Some are they don't play well with even half dirty amps, but some do. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier. That's the joy of trying out all these different bits of kit and, having fun. But yeah, I can't wait for you to see when I put that video together, because obviously I've got my vintage quad mic'd up in the garage. And I'm going to use like minimal studio processing, of course, so you can really just hear the tone of the amp and the box. But man, with the 87 in the front, just sounds like 1984 Malmsteen. It's so cool. That pick
Nice.
attack, the pick attack has this little, like a little crunch on the start. Even when you're playing really fast on the neck pickup, sometimes, you know, the neck pickup will smooth off all your articulation.
Yeah.
And this, it doesn't at all. It's really aggressive, and you wouldn't think so. You know, we're used to power amp distortion, you know, like the transformer and tube distortion being really aggressive pick attack wise, but this is equally as aggressive, but it's just in a different way, you know. It's very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah, that's why I felt like running that on the red channel and then hitting it with like the nice drive A.
And so yeah, oh yeah. So
you know, and because I was playing Van Halen Top of the World, and I was trying to get that little click, and I was like, the red is there, it's just about there, but I don't like pushing the gain too much on it. And all of a sudden, I just put on the nice drive A, and all of a sudden, I'm like, there it is. That's what it needed. Clicked on the chorus, and away we went.
Don't you think that, like, to me, all my favorite distorted rock guitar sounds from my idols, I sort of discovered that it was all about the pick attack more than it was about how much distortion and the sustain and all those things that happen after the initial transient. I realized that all the guitarists I used to love had a really, really spiky transient, like Eddie, like Yngwie, like, you know, there's so many different players back then. And I think
digging in without digging in somehow.
Digging in without digging in. Yeah. Everything had this like crisp articulation, you know, and it's really fun because, you know, certainly here in Melbourne, you can't find a real late 60s, early 70s plexi that's any good. You just can't. They don't exist. So the fact that people are making really cool boutique reissues of them is just so much fun for me. And it's happened at the exact same 5-year, you know, period, last 10 years, where there's this upsurge of really cool pedals, boutique analog stuff. And I sort of get to feel like I'm 15 again, you know?
Exactly.
It's really fun.
I agree.
Because I grew up at a time where I kind of went from pedals and a combo straight into rack gear, because at the time rack gear was what all my idols were using.
Sure. And you almost felt embarrassed to have pedals, right? Well, I just used, because I'm using the cheap pedal knockoff version of the rack effect that I really want to have.
Yeah, it felt like exactly. You couldn't have put it better. It felt like the pedal was a cheap knockoff of the rack. Right. Exactly. And so I used to pride myself on saving up my coin and getting the rack stuff. But now I realize that actually most of those early 80s, late 70s recordings that I used to just listen to over and over again, it wasn't really rack gear that recorded it. It was just overdriven amps, whether they were heads or combos, and with a couple of pedals in the front, you know?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Mayhem asks, on your guitar, where do you usually keep your volume at? He puts everything at 10, everything wide open all the time, which is the way I run.
Mayhem, you're a man after my own heart. Yeah, I've always been like that. I know a lot of guitarists talk about finding a sweet spot around 7 or 8, even 9. I've never done that, only because, again, I just like to simplify everything, because I just feel like there's enough complications with a guitar signal chain without having to worry about which number my guitar volume's accidentally knocked onto at the same time. So for me, when I'm building tones at home or in the studio before going out on the road or recording, I just always do it with my guitar volume on 10, right up against the, you know, where you can't turn it up anymore. So that way it kind of eliminates the variable of me having knocked the volume and then going, oh, what's happened to the sound of my amp, you know? But look, I mean, I know a lot of great guitarists, and even personally some here in Melbourne, that swear by the sound of, and especially with more vintage style guitars than the modern guitars, like Strats and Tellys and stuff, using the volume backed off a bit. Personally, for me, I'd rather just back off the presence and treble in my amp than back off my guitar volume, because again, if I knock it, which I will, I mean, I've got a very busy, I'm actually pretty heavy handed with my right hand, and I use hard picks, which means I'm going to knock my volume knob. And And I learned this about myself pretty young, like when I was 18 and started really hitting the Melbourne cover band scene. I just kept hitting toggle switches and knobs on the guitar and tone knobs. So now I even disconnect my tone controls if a guitar's got them, because I just don't use them. I would rather use, again, I know some people swear by, like, especially on a Telecaster, you roll off a bit of tone. I would actually rather just have my volume on full on the Telecaster and then have like an EQ pedal or some kind of a preamp pedal that can back off some treble and presence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always exactly the same amount of treble lost when I hit it.
Yeah.
I just don't trust myself with rolling off a tone control and knowing it'll stay in that position for the show.
I've done the roll off the tone on tellies only for some reason. You're playing a song, so I'm like, wow, I do sound too bright. So I'll back it off on the guitar, finish the song, bring it back up, adjust my amp, and then continue on. It's one of those situations. I'll only use those in an emergency, until I can get back to adjust the amp at a song break. But
for sure.
And I think using fuzz, yes, I'll play with the volume, because you have to. You have to play with the volume if you're using like a fuzz face circuit in the Strat. But that's almost like its own unique thing. I only play with the volume if I'm playing a Strat and or using a fuzz. That's pretty much it.
Okay, I agree with that. I didn't think of that, so thanks for bringing that up, Ben. Yeah, my only exception to all of what I just said is if I'm using a fuzz pedal. As we all know, they're so sensitive. Yeah, they're so sensitive to input, whether it's input in volume or input in treble. And in terms of how they react, I'm not an expert on fuzz and their circuitries. I just know that they're very sensitive. And so that's a time, especially if I'm doing a recording, I will fiddle around with the controls on my guitar to get the exact level of fuzz and response that I want out of it. So yeah, Ben, I totally agree, brother. That's my exception. But anything normal, non-fuzz, I like to just keep everything on its lock stops, so that I if they get bumped, I know where to go back to immediately, So
sure.
That's me. Yeah.
And good to see Metalhead Hippie. He says the power's out at his place, so he's currently on his phone. Well, I hope your power comes back on, because don't you usually have a show in about 11 minutes? Just saying.
Who's this, Ben?
Metalhead Hippie.
Oh, of course. Yes. That's right. And actually, John, you were saying that, let me just reread it to make sure I've got you right. I think you were saying you like to let the amp do the work and use lower output pickups and stuff like that. Yeah, I agree. I think that look, honestly, I think even if you're playing like what do you call it now? Like new metal, new prog metal, like all those incredible guitarists doing that stuff that are using quite high output pickups. But actually, I think you could totally get the same exact sound with lower output pickups and just adding 10% more gain,
Yeah.
What
happened?
Yeah.
The Magic Man I mentioned, he goes, one of the best boosts, for distortion is a clean boost. I agree. That's why, like, the Nice Drive A really doesn't have a lot of gain in it, but it's got a lot of just oomph.
Yes, because even if you want to talk about low output pickups to high output pickups, the high output pickup doesn't add distortion inside the pickup. It just adds output, which really, Ben, your Nice Drive A, it's doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's just output.
Yeah, so the high output pickup revolution really began because at that time, amps weren't as gainy as they are now, and the pedals weren't as great sounding. Distortion.
You had pretty much what, like, as far as in America, it was pretty much Electro Harmonics doing the LB1, which is essentially a clean boost.
Yep.
Or the muff.
Yep.
And the muff is drastic tone changer.
And then, of course, a bit later than that, you had some of the beginnings of the Boss stuff. But
sure.
Honestly, personally, I never really liked the sound of it. I don't really like the sound of a DS1. I hate to say, but I just don't. I find it very grainy.
Yeah, for years it was people using SD1 into a Plexi, and that was the LA sound.
Absolutely. And as most people would know, even when Vi was recording all of that stuff for the first couple of Roth records, Edelman, Smile, and Skyscraper, he was using Jose modded Marshalls with a super overdrive in the front. But I just think now we have such a broad sonic palette of all this awesome sounding stuff, and we've got these tone wizards, and some of them we know, personally, like Lawrence, who now have decades of prehistory to draw from and iron out and eliminate all the mistakes that we don't like the sound of. So I feel like the high output pickup thing just doesn't really. It's not a factor anymore in terms of how much gain you can get, because you can get smoother, nicer sounding gain from a great pedal or a great amp,
Oh, exactly.
And I know John's got the B100. Man, that thing will go from a great plexi sound, like you were saying, bro, to like a full modded Marshall.
Yeah.
And a low output passive pickup will sound better into a B100 to my ears, to my taste, than than a super high output like an Invader or something,
Yeah, exactly, John. That was the comment. Yeah, an 800 with an SD1. Yep, everyone was playing JCM 800 SD1.
That's right. But
but that sound. I remember. Well, when I played the gig with Killer Dwarves.
Yeah.
Jerry had that sound, that LA Sunset Strip sound. I'm like, what is that? He goes, it's my 800, and I look, and he had a beat to hell SD1 on his pedal board. And he goes, that's it. And I'm like, that's all you need. He goes, that's all I need. That with a Les Paul. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, some of the higher output pickups, there's other elements to why they're different too, like different magnets and all of that. So if you like the actual tone difference because of the different magnets, that's great. And I think then it's all fine. Because again, you can always roll the volume down, Yeah. But if it's just purely about the DC output and the gain, I just think that's a bit redundant now. And so I would rather have a low output passive pickup where if I roll the volume off, it cleans up really beautifully. But if I want to turn the volume on 10 and then kick in a pedal, it'll roar. I think having that versatility for all of us is really important now,
I agree. Your fellow Melbourne neighbor says, until someone comes along and gets a good sound with all the wrong gear. Yep.
Well, that'll happen. It's bound to happen because it's happened throughout history already, Yep. I know actually on Tone Talk, Dave and Mark always talk about Ty Tabor, and all the weird stuff he used to use. I love some of that King's X stuff. And in fact, the Dogman record I used to listen to a lot. I'm not that familiar with the gear he used, but I just know from what everyone says, it was very unorthodox, especially for the time, but he got a great sound.
So, I agree. And you even think, like Tom Schultz with the Rockman, Yeah. He's like, I'm good. I got this. I'm good. That's my rig.
Hey, Jeff says, hey, Jeff, Happy New Year, brother. Simon, love your playing. Can you recount your story of playing with a TV show's house band and the Floyd Rose incident? Oh, yes. I'd prefer to not, but since you've asked. So I was just out of high school. I was going to the College of the Arts to study jazz, and I was just sort of spreading my wings and getting out into the scene and doing gigs. And I landed a gig. My ex-guitar teacher used to play regularly in an Australian TV show called Hey, Hey, It's Saturday, which was one of those. It was basically Australia's Letterman show, but at 6:30 p.m. on a Saturday evening. So it was like a variety show with interviews and chats. And then if there was a band coming through town, they would always get a spot,
Sure.
And everyone used to watch that, and especially any sort of teenage budding musicians in Australia, you would tune into this because not only were the house band really great musicians, but then you'd see whoever was traveling through town as well, playing live basically. Like we had, I was everyone from Warrant came through and played Uncle Tom's Cabin live on there, and to even like old more like retro acts like Donna Summer and stuff like that. So it was a real sort of who's who. Anyway, he had to go on tour with a big Australian artist at the time, and I'd only just stopped being a student, and he said, would you like to fill in for me for a couple of months in the house band? And I was like, of course, and I was rubbing my hands together going, wow, this is the beginning of my career kind of thing, Anyway, so I did that. And on the very, very first show, I was using at the time Actually, I have right here what I was using at the time. I can show you. It was a Fender Hartfield Talon 4.
Ooh.
And, there's been so many guitars that I've sold over the years that I regret selling. And I would have thought intuitively that this is probably would be one that I would have sold. And for some reason, I never did. I've still got it. Anyway, I was using this. And let me just say, I will never use a floating bridge system on a live TV show ever again. Because in one of the ad breaks, the host of the show, Daryl Summers, came up to us and he said, "So I believe we've got a new guitarist in the band, so let's give him a feature playing in from the ad break." So we decided we were going to do Layla, and I was going to take this big ripping guitar solo. I had a Marshall half stack behind me. And I was like, all right, this is going to be fun. I can get to have a shred on national TV live, except for as soon as we came out of the ad break, no sooner that had I played like bink, my string broke, and the whole guitar went completely out of tune in a way that is just not fixable, and you can't really work around it. So someone somewhere will have video, probably my parents actually, will have VHS video of me, and the camera was right up in my face at the time. And so, all my family, friends, and relatives got to see me going like this on live TV, and then struggling with a whammy bar to try and keep it in tune playing Layla. I mean, if there was ever a learning lesson for like how not to do your debut on live national TV, that was definitely it.
Yep, I'll do it.
So thank you, Mr. Floyd Rose, for building something that couldn't get me out of a jam. But anyway, look, it's a pretty funny story. Someone will have that on video somewhere, I'm sure. But
trim stops for the win.
Yeah, it was. Joe, it was a nightmare, brother. I was so young and so just really trying to make a good impression coming into the Melbourne music scene that just scarred me for months. But like all things, in the end, no one really remembers except whoever asked that question. Jeff remembers somehow. Thank you, Jeff.
It was interesting because as soon as you had started the story and when you walked to grab that guitar, and then that's when John Shane says, "This is why I deck my Floyds," I think, because he was expecting the story.
Oh yeah, yeah, John. That's why if you've got a Floyd Rose and you're going to do any kind of live TV stuff, deck it. I mean, at a normal gig, you might have a crew guy, you might have a backup guitar. I just didn't. It was a house band. There was no crew and there was no backup guitar. So, and even actually, no, that's not true. I did have a Strat as a backup, but I can't put it down on a play on. I was committed. So there was me in vain trying to play Layla with the whammy bar and trying to judge how much each string was out of tune. It didn't work. I didn't judge it very well. I remember it sounded pretty bad when I watched it back. So yeah.
You're interesting. I was doing the jazz take on it.
Jazz, yeah. Oh, there's nothing like a bit of quarter tones in TV bands,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stevie Ray made a career out of quarter tones.
He really did. That is true. That is, actually, yeah. John just said, grab a slide like Guthrie. I've heard about that Guthrie story, although I haven't seen it, but apparently that is incredible. And I was just not smart enough to think of grabbing a slide at that age. I was just.
I think Jeff felt guilty. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the donation, buddy.
No problems, Jeff.
Oh. Well, we are getting to the top of the hour, so I'll say to the folks in the chat, any final questions, get them in now. We'll go for a few more minutes here. John asked, did Red gong you?
No, Red didn't gong me, but Red Simons was playing in the band at the time, who was a really well-known Australian guitarist, used to play in a band in the 70s called Skyhooks. And he was not known for being chatty or friendly. And I just he just leaned over my shoulder and he goes, Yeah, that was great, buddy. So yeah. Oh dear.
And the thing is, when most people, even if they see the broken string, they don't realize that the other strings go out of tune when that one breaks. Well, you still got 5 more.
Yeah, you know what? I'll tell you why I think that is. I agree with you. People that don't play guitar don't realize that all the rest go out of tune because I guess in subconsciously they just know like hundreds of years of violin players, you know? Like guitars with floating bridges is a pretty new thing, really, in terms of musical history. And so Leo says,
like even with a hardtail, your strings can go out a bit. You know, sometimes you get lucky. You know, but I've had it where just whatever it is, the shock of it or whatever, they all decide to just phone it in. Yeah.
Hardtail will still go out of tune a tiny bit because obviously the tension on the neck has changed and the neck bends a little bit. But it's savable because you can adjust for it with your tension of your playing hand. But on a floating bridge, it's just all over. You may as well just put the guitar down. That's what I should have done. In retrospect, I should have just put it down and stopped, you know. So that's it. That's what you get, you know.
Bent Tom. What's up, brother Tom? Says, when will we see and hear Haas's 5150 guitar?
Oh, I know what he's talking about. He's talking about that I've been promising amongst all my other promises to do a video on my final version of the Van Halen wet dry wet rig with the 5150 guitar. For anyone that hasn't seen it, it's right here.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
So there's the 5150 guitar, which is gorgeous and awesome to play. And I have been promising I'll do a little video that I'll throw up just on like how the rig's coming along for the show and for the rehearsal process. A bit of a, just people can get a fly on the wall look at the putting the rig together, really. It's coming, Tom. I promise it's coming. In fact, it's probably coming this week because we've got a rehearsal on Friday with all the boys in the band. And it's our first big production rehearsal in a big room for this year. So obviously for this year, but we haven't rehearsed for a little while now. We've been a bit slack over December. So we're going to blow out some cobwebs. And while I'm putting all that together, I'll do a video for sure.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. Hey, Surf B, Mark Dillon. He's doing okay today, Surf B. He has good days and bad. He's okay. He wasn't up for having dinner tonight, but I said, are you feeling okay? He went, I'm okay. So he's okay, I guess. So John's looking forward to the 25th.
Yeah, we were really, really lucky. We after postponing the gig because of COVID 5 separate times, we actually, the only date that the Corner Hotel could give us, and the reason that we sort of doggedly wanted to stay with that venue is because really it's Melbourne's best rock venue and has been for decades. So it's where all the bands that wouldn't do a huge room, that even from the States and Canada and the UK would come through, they would do the Corner Hotel. And so we really wanted to do it there. And they said, look, the only date we can give you for the whole first 3 months of 2022 is Tuesday, January the 25th. And I was like, Tuesday, man, we want to play on a Friday or a Saturday, surely, you know. But it turns out that the next day is an Australian public holiday, Australia Day.
So it's basically a Friday.
So it ends up being basically a Friday. But then I didn't even realize at first. I realized, oh my God, it's the eve of Eddie Van Halen's birthday. So it turns out that we've actually got the night that where we'll play through midnight. We'll click over into Eddie's birthday. So we'll turn the house lights off and bring out a big red, white, and black striped birthday cake. And it's actually going to be really fun. So now we're marketing it as a birthday celebration, which actually is way more fun than as a memorial anyway.
Sure.
Yep.
Awesome.
So yeah, it'd be great.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. Because hey, that's cool with me. Any parting words, Haas? This has been great having you back on, my friend.
Well, I would just like to say thank you for having me back on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I always love dropping in on your show in the chat when I can. And I'm glad that your Christmas and New Year's was uneventful and safe. And Happy New Year to everyone too in the chat. And obviously not everyone I get to speak to, and some people I do. But yeah, Happy New Year. I hope no one works too hard for the next week at least.
Mm-hmm. And if you're in the Melbourne area, definitely get down and check this out, this event. It's going to be a spectacle. I just already know it. It's going to be a spectacle. Well, and actually, I'm going to say not only subscribe to Haas's channel, but John ZD351, because he's going to be there to witness the spectacle. And you'll be like, uh-oh, I better get my phone out for this. So there's going to be that point of view as well. So, yeah, I'm saying, is he going to bootleg it? He's going to bootleg it. I'm just saying.
And if anyone wants to see Brad Cook carrying all my Marshall quad boxes in for the sound check, then watch out for that as well, because he's promised to do that, and we made a bet, so he can't wriggle out of it now. But actually, after I jump off with you, Ben, I'm spending the rest of my day finishing all my my promos for the show, which involved us being filmed at a production rehearsal with lights and stuff. So by the time you guys all wake up over there, you'll see the promo and have a look at what the show is going to look like.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to that. So on that note, folks, I hope you enjoyed the show, because I certainly did. And I want to thank everybody that tuned in. Again, if you're new, please subscribe. And I appreciate the Mod Squad helping out with the links and the deletes. You guys know there's stuff, folks, you don't see. I see it. They don't see it, but I see it. And special thanks to anybody that contributed tonight. We got a few donations in. I always appreciate it. And I'll be back tomorrow night with Canucks with Guitars, featuring myself, Tom, and Terry, live Q&A. And I didn't tell it tonight, so I'll tell it tomorrow, the latest plumbing story. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I had the plumber back at the house again. So, yeah. So peace, be well. As always, hold those doors open. Let that lady in heady in traffic. Do good things, and good things will happen to you. Why? Doug's wife is real. Somebody asked me the other day, is she really real? I'm like, yeah. Why do you say that she's real? I said, because her name is Karma. He's like, how does she spell it? I said, Karma. So she is real. I'm like, this is what I've been saying for 3 years on YouTube. Because I get it. So
great.
Be awesome, folks. Happy tone chasing. And of course, don't litter. Why? Just don't.